Today, what I want to do is give you a review of the 2020 pandemic. We're going to look at some historical data. We're going to see where the pandemic was producing about 4,000 deaths per day in our country. And at the peak, we were topping out at about 750,000 new cases of COVID per day. From there, we're going to look at some current data. We're going to see that in the state of North Carolina, we're averaging around 2,000 new hospitalizations of COVID-19 per week. So the virus is still out there. It is viable. It continues to mutate to get around our vaccines and current herd immunity. From there, we're going to travel to Guangzhou, China, take a look at the first documented case of airborne transmission of COVID-19 spread in a restaurant by the HVAC system. And at the end, then I'll come back and give you a brief summary. Let's take a look at the historical data on the 2020 pandemic. This chart shows data beginning early 2020, starting around March is when COVID-19 shows up on our charts. And it goes to the end of 2022. This first bit of data here is New York City. We had a summer surge, had a holiday surge. Spring 2021, vaccines became available. Then we started to see the virus mutate. We got up to 750,000 cases a day. 750,000 cases a day at the peak of the pandemic. Hospitals were overrun. The Army Corps engineers came in and provided thousands of hospital beds around the country. Here are daily deaths over the time period from 2020 through the end of 2022. Again, here is New York City showing up around March of 2020. Summer surge, holiday surge, spring vaccines came available. We can see the deaths from Omicron. Omicron came along here and here, the variants. They were less potent as far as their ability to kill. They were less lethal, but they were highly contagious. New York City brought in refrigeration trucks because their morgues were being overrun. They didn't have enough storage space for the bodies. Now, I never thought I would see this. New York City. I thought I'd see this and never thought I would see this in New York City. I never thought I would see this in the United States. Scenes like this I thought were reserved for war zones and war crimes like in Kosovo or Nazi Germany. Mass graves here in the United States. On Hart Island in New York City. Mass graves. How easily we forget. In India, they were burning bodies 24/7 in parking lots. Unemployment overnight went from 4% to over 15% here in the United States. People didn't have money. They were out of work. Theaters were closed. Schools closed. Professional sports, baseball, basketball, hockey, all that shut down. Churches were closed, health clubs, you name it. We've never seen anything like it, at least not in my lifetime. As a result, we had long food lines. People didn't have food. They were waiting hours in their cars to get food. Here's what food lines look like in San Antonio, Texas. it was pretty devastating for our country and for around the world. Let's look at some current data. This chart shows the number of new cases in the state of North Carolina. March 2020, pandemic continues. The data stops right here around May 2023. That corresponds with the World Health Organization's declaring that the pandemic was essentially over. But you can see that the number of cases is not at zero. You can go back and see other places over the history of the pandemic where the infection rate was low, but yet the virus was able to make a comeback. It's very resilient as it mutates to stay viable. Number of hospitalizations, state of North Carolina. Again, beginning of the pandemic. This data is up to date, it's current. We're still tracking the number of hospitalizations. As you can see, the number is far from being zero. This is a plan view of the restaurant in Guangzhou, China, where we documented 9 cases of COVID transmission from one infected individual. These are tables. You see 5 round tables here. They're seated. The round circles are people seated around the table. The air conditioning is mounted above the first table. The discharge from the air conditioning is high in the air. The return is also over here on this wall, high in the air. This one person here in the red came from Wuhan, China, to Guangzhou, had dinner with family members, infected 4 family members at his table, 3 members of a different family. At other tables, 2 members of this family at a table that was upstream of the airflow. So the way this HVAC system was set up, it is taking and blowing air down the line, and then it's returning air back into the HVAC return. So you have people on both sides of this infected person. You have people downstream and you have people upstream of the air conditioning flow getting infected. This was early. This was about February of 2020 where we had this first documented case of COVID being transferred, which gave us the indication that it is being transmitted by airborne aerosols. Let's look at lessons that we should have learned. It only takes one infected individual to kick off a pandemic. It only takes one person with a highly infected pathogen like COVID-19. And as a result, we lost 1.2 million people in our country. The effect on the economy at $16 trillion is a little more than half of our national debt. People are still suffering from the after effects called long COVID, 17 million Americans. And the virus, as we saw on the North Carolina charts for hospitalizations and for new cases, we know that the infection potential is still out there for this virus. So all of these things cause us to recognize the need, or should have caused us to recognize the need for fundamental change in how we design HVAC systems. So there you have it, a review of the 2020 pandemic. We just saw where cases in the country hit 750,000 a day. Deaths were peaking out at 4,000 deaths per day. We saw temporary hospitals and temporary morgues set up around the country. And we saw that in the state of North Carolina, about 2,000 new cases of hospitalizations are still taking place. The virus is quite viable. It continues to mutate to get around our vaccines and our herd immunity. We traveled to Guangzhou, China, where we saw the first documented case of airborne transmission. This transmission indoors was fueled by the design of the HVAC system. So we should have learned that every United States case of COVID-19 is more likely than not directly related to an HVAC system indoors. We can redesign HVAC systems to minimize the transfer of disease by turbulence. If we get rid of turbulence, we get rid of the mixing, we can get rid of the transmission of disease indoors caused by HVAC mixing, which tech has accomplished that. So hit the like button if you found this information to be informative, and subscribe to the Wij Tech Projects YouTube channel. We have more things to come and show you. Thank you for watching.